Patrick Johnston, we like to let these videos kind of have a bit of a shelf life over the week, but I'm going to wish you will give away a few inside baseball secrets. We're recording this on Friday. Happy Frigid Friday to you. I hope you are staying warm.
Inside
You would
now.
hope. Yeah, well, you would hope that your roof is in good repair. So I'll thank Paragon Roofing at paragonroofing.bc. You do not want to have any roof issues when it's this cold, losing heat, and they are great for that. Free quotes, visit their website. Just plug in your details. They look after you, restoration, repair, brand new installation, commercial, everything. Paragon Roofing BC .ca. They are the company that you want if you're fixing your roof. I'm going to start this week with a trivia question. Who were the Vancouver Terminals and why are they relevant today?
The Vancouver Terminals?
Yes.
Why are they relevant today? Were they? I have no idea, Paul. I've never. I couldn't even fathom a guess.
Okay. From 1920 to 1924, the Vancouver Terminals were a lacrosse team that were, one of their star players went by the name of Newsy Lalonde.
Nice.
Newsy Lalonde, a Hall of Fame hockey player with the Montreal Canadiens, played with them from 1909 until 1920-21. Concurrently, he had a lacrosse career that brought him to Vancouver. First played for Vancouver Lacrosse Club, played for the Vancouver Green Shirts, and then finished his career in 1924 with the Vancouver Terminals. You tell me why that's relevant to this podcast.
Well,
why it's new? Why? Hey, this is my province heritage. Tell us why this is newsy, Patrick.
Well, Steve Ewan's about to come in, right? No, we should have had Steve Ewan on.
We should have. Steve, tell us about Vancouver Green Shirts.
Yeah, New Zealand. Yeah, Steve was there. Oh my goodness, Steve's going to kill me for that. New Zealand, one of the first true superstars of the NHL. The 1920-21 season, playing for the Montreal Canadiens, 5 games in a row. New Zealand in the middle of a 13-game goal streak. Of course, hockey very different then, but 5 games in a row. February 1921, New Zealand scored the game winner 5 games in a row. Now, let's fast forward to 2024. Elias Pettersson, as of today, has scored the winning goal in 4 straight games. The Canucks have won 4 games this week, and all 4 games, the winning goal has been scored by Elias Pettersson. So, I mean, maybe by the time people see this, it'll be Saturday, and Elias Pettersson has tied New Zealand because he scored the winning goal against the Buffalo Sabres. We'll see. It is a feat. The thing that's notable about this is that there have only been 3 players in NHL history to have done or have scored the winning goal in 4 straight games, as Pettersson has done. There's obviously Lalonde, because 4 of the first 4 of the 5 games, and Daniel Alfredsson in 2007. I think in January. There's something about frigid middle of the winter hockey that powers people into wanting to score winning goals or something. I don't know. But yeah, great week. Obviously it's been a fantastic week for Elias Pettersson. The Lotto line back together, absolutely dominating, doing everything they can, scoring. They look like a group of players right now who step on the ice and just know they're going to score. And there's nothing more exciting to watch. I think, whether you're covering the team or you're a fan, than when players are at the peak of their powers, and that's what we're seeing right now.
Yeah, and I'm going to see if our super producer Nikki Bennett can add this visual. But when I saw a picture of Newsy Lalonde, I thought he was wearing a Vancouver Millionaires jersey because it's got the nice V. It looks very similar,
right?
But that's actually the Vancouver Terminals jersey. So, I wonder if our Canucks Sports and Entertainment also on the Warriors. Maybe that's another retro line that they can bring along. We'll talk more about individual players in a bit. I want to ask you, obviously they start the road trip with a loss to the Blues. No big deal. You can't win every game, but they've won now. The next 4 against what you would term good opposition on the road. 3 games in 4 nights in the New York sweep. I know you're not doing the same traveling you would be if you were in some other reaches of the country, but they won those games convincingly, and then they win in overtime against Pittsburgh. It's another good team. These are quality wins. Now you got Buffalo and Columbus to finish the road trip.
Yeah.
And then you come home to play Arizona.
Yeah.
Can't count your chickens, but I wanted to ask you, in your experience, both prior to you covering the team and being a fan, and since you've been covering the team through this moribund period, what do you expect the atmosphere to be like for that first game back, Thursday the 18th against Arizona? I have
Well,
a feeling that's gonna be
yeah.
very 2011-esque. I don't know if Francesco's bringing in U2 to play them onto the ice, as per the rumor in the 2011 finals. But I have a feeling that this road trip is just going to do a spinal tap and turn that atmosphere up to 11.
Well, I mean, look how boisterous things were last week against Ottawa, and how boisterous things were before Christmas. Anytime the team's been playing well in the last, I'd say, month, people started to buy in. Like they're people go to a Canucks game wanting a good time. We've known this for a long time. They haven't been able to have a good time in quite a long time. Now they have an expectation of a good time. They come in, they're ready to go, they're fired up. I think that home game next week is going to be a loud one. It was, it's funny that you bring that up. I was thinking about that Thursday night or Thursday afternoon when the Canucks were in Pittsburgh. I'm covering the game off the TV, and that third period, obviously huge pushback from the Penguins and Sidney Crosby, and Penguins fans are as knowledgeable and on point as they come. And that was a crowd that was into that game, right? Like the Penguins were trying to draw. They did obviously end up tying the game, Crosby scoring late, but that whole period as they pressed and the Canucks were defending well, and obviously under pressure, and you're gonna give up shots, but never looked out of control. And that crowd was right into it, and that got me thinking about how of late Rogers Arena has felt like that. That energy level has been high. The crowd's been right on top of it, reacting, with great energy. Anything that happens that's obviously going to please the crowd. I think the Canucks are sliding themselves into a great spot. And let's say, literally, I mean, this is what ownership's been dreaming of for the longest time. Probably could have gotten to this point sooner if they hadn't dithered and had such sort of ridiculous hope. The endless no plan, as our pal Ray Ferraro always called it. But we've now seen 2 years of work. This Patrick Alvin's been GM for 2 years. Jim Rutherford's been president for just over 2 years. They've been focused and diligent on what they're trying to build around the team's best players, and they're seeing the fruits of their labor. Obviously, this is a team that can score. This is a team that's defending quite well. I mean, that's the quiet story in all this, is that they've actually in the last month or so really turned a corner defensively. Thatcher Demko was outstanding in Pittsburgh. I think he's been a little uneven otherwise, but they're getting everything they need to have happen. Obviously, they're getting some bounces too, and some of those bounces are going to stop going their way, you would think. But the overall package, the overall sort of plan that this team is doing off the ice, on the ice, is outstanding, and there's every reason for fans to be excited. And they're going to be a hot ticket in the stretch drive here. Lots of home games coming up.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at their, there's only 3 teams that have allowed fewer goals than they have.
Right.
And LA is the one that makes your eyes pop out, because they still have 4 games in hand on the Canucks.
Yeah.
And they've given up 13 fewer goals in 4 less games even.
Right.
And then, of course, you've got this weird story while we're all focused on the Canucks. I will fully admit it wasn't until this week that I was aware at all that the Winnipeg Jets were having such a good
Amazing.
season.
Yeah.
It just kind of snuck up on you. We're so used
8
to the
straight
Canucks.
wins.
And so, I think there's some amazing storylines in the NHL this year, and that's great for the league. But overall, you talk about that, goals against has been something that they've improved on, and they're still by a stunning margin the highest scoring team in the NHL. So obviously, when you're good at stopping goals and you're good at scoring them, you're going to be at the top of the standings. You're going to be a very good team. Winnipeg, I would add, maybe not quite the juggernaut in terms of scoring goals, and the goal differential. I know it's a weird stat in hockey, but Canucks are plus 54, Winnipeg's plus 44.
Right.
And they have one game in hand. So, still not quite as good as the Canucks, but I'm wondering, would this be a great playoff matchup to see, but we're putting the cart before the horse there. There's so much to talk about with this team. I did want to ask you, though, about the lotto line. in the past, I think when that line has had success, the idea has been we don't have enough good players to just concentrate them when in one line. We have to spread that out. Now that you have seen, and I think, look, there's something I want to bring up later that might divide viewers and our readers a little bit, but regardless of who you give credit for building this roster, I think one of the probably under the radar things that Patrick Allvin and Jim Rutherford has done is round out the whole team. So you don't have to worry about concentrating your top talent. You can. Do you see this to be the long-term future of this team, that the second, third, and fourth lines are doing well enough on their own, are completely capable? You can leave those three guys together.
I mean, I think you do ride them as long as you can.
Look, okay, even first round playoffs, game 7, are these three guys playing together?
Yes, because you need the goals, right? I think in the end you ride this along, and I think if you can keep them together, I think you do keep them together. The challenge now is finding. I mean, we've talked so long about finding that second line winger. Well, it might be that we're now talking about finding the second line center. Pius Suter is an excellent player and has been perfect, but he's not playing the role that he was cast to play. And in the end, let's look at championship teams and what they do. And what they do is they add players that push players down the lineup, right? So that you have guys that were on the second line now playing on the third line, third liners that are now playing the fourth line. You know, look at 2011, right? The Canucks go and pick up Chris Higgins and Max Lapierre, partly because, you know, they wanted more depth. And Chris Higgins comes in, becomes a third liner. Rafi Torres, who'd had a great season as a third liner, becomes a fourth liner. You know, like that's the kind of thing you're looking for. Obviously, Lapierre was fortuitous because they then lost Manny Malhotra, but the overall point is that you need depth. You know somebody's going to get hurt. You know that you're going to need guys like people forget Michael Samuelsson was injured after the second round of the playoffs in 2011, right? Like a guy who'd been one of their best two-way forwards was a non-factor in the Stanley Cup final. A guy that they could have used, right? So now the Canucks question is, do they want to go find someone who can play center? I mean, that's going to be a steep price, probably harder to get than a second line winger, because then you can move Miller back, so on and so on and so on. But as it's constructed, you know, there's enough depth in this lineup that they are going to. We've seen enough from that sort of that Bluger, Joshua, Garland line to know that that's a line that at worst is going to hold its own, at best is going to be a team that's taking advantage of every matchup it gets. That fourth line, I mean, that fourth line is working hard. Like Sam Lafferty and Niels Oman and Niels Hoglander are like that. That's a hustling, hardworking fourth line. I personally would rather have an upgrade on Niels Oman. Like, he kills penalties well. He's a smart defensive player. No offense to speak of. And if you're looking for, you know, you need unsung heroes in the playoffs, I don't think Niels Oman's going to fill that gap. But and that's why, again, so you can push Pius Suter, you can push Bluger down. All of a sudden, you've got a guy in the second line who's better, or whether it's you're moving Miller or you're moving wingers around. But the point is that the Canucks have flexibility in their lineup, and that is something that has long been talked about. But now it's actually true. They actually can do some mix and match. And again, you need to find an upgrade. I think if you're really serious with this team, you're trying to find at least one more guy. Ideally, I think they still would like to find a defenseman, but clearly they're looking for a forward. We know they've been looking for a forward for a while, and now we can see why.
So who's the Canucks MVP for you at this point?
Oh, what a question! I for the longest time, I think it was clearly Quinn Hughes. If we're allowed to pick MVP of the week, it's clearly Elias Pettersson.
Well, that's sort of what I'm getting at. Like there's at least 5 guys you can pick, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, it's such an interesting option,
and it just depends on the week.
Yeah, I've got to think it's Pettersson, because there's so much leaning on him now. Like, you look at, he ended up taking a lot of big faceoffs this week, you know, there's such a sort of expectation on him to deliver, and he's doing it. You know, like JT Miller's having a great year, and
fourth in the NHL in points,
but has had a hard time. Yeah, you're right. Like that's the thing. How do you go against a guy who's fourth in the NHL in points? It's a bit
maybe with Brock Besser fourth in the NHL in goals.
Yeah, like you go, but it's like go even further back. It's a bit like the Gretzky-Messier dilemma, right? Remember, people used to always say, "Well, Gretzky's the leading scorer, but Messier is the real like heart and soul of the team, or whatever." And maybe
then people would make the argument for Paul Coffey that he made it all.
That whole thing. So it's a tough. I mean, what an amazing debate. That there's even a question.
Or is it Thatcher Demko, second in the NHL in wins?
If Demko had been playing better, I mean, it sounds weird to say. He's
third in save percentage.
Yeah, he's got a case for the Vezina. I mean,
this is it. Week for week, you can make an argument for any of those guys to be the team MVP, and how could that team not be a true contender? I think that's where we are.
Yeah, and that's it. And I think at the end of the year, at the end of the regular season, I think. Because Demko has been exactly who he is expected to be and should be, versus the rest of the lineup who've been over and above probably what you think, in a weird way, you could see at the end of it all, it's sort of it's a bit of the tortoise and the hare kind of thing that Demko will come through being the most consistent player on the season on the whole, and so maybe that will make him the MVP. But yeah, you're right. Like, pick your week; it's going to be someone different, and that's an amazing thing. I mean, it is a true credit to how hard this management group has worked to put this group of players together, how hard the players themselves have worked together, how hard Rick Tocchet and his staff have worked to set things up. I mean, there's all these good stories right now. The vibes are amazing. Immaculate.
Thank you for that. And it was unscripted. You didn't know. I teased earlier that I was going to bring up something that could be divisive, and you led me right into it. However, I will say we haven't even talked about Philip Hronek.
Yeah.
Who, if his nickname, and if hockey wasn't so shitty with their stupid nicknames of just adding a Y, his nickname should be Jeremy, right? Like, I mean, it has to be, but instead he's probably like Ronnie. That's probably his nickname, but Jeremy Hronek. Get it?
Like, yeah. Well,
anyway, I have seen some people obviously trolling and talk about how we should be bowing down and praying at the altar of the person who constructed this team of Jim Benning. And certainly when you look at a lot of the guys that we've just talked about, there has to be some credit in hindsight, maybe not specifically for Jim, specifically for Jim, but more so like of the structure. When you look at some of these core pieces like Miller, Besser, like PD, Quinn, like they're obviously all, were inherited by this group. So what's the secret sauce here, Patrick? Who, I mean, maybe they should just share the credit, but who is there credit to be given to the previous group for getting that? And then this group gets credit for crafting it and adding to it and getting it over the line. Like, I don't think it's unfair to say that this team wouldn't be where it is had you not made changes.
Right.
So maybe it's shared credit, but in hindsight, that the previous regime was really lambasted by a lot of Canuck fans. Do they deserve much, if any, credit at all?
It's a difficult, and I think it's a difficult question. I think it requires a very nuanced answer. Did the main stars on this team come on this team, join this group under Jim Benning's watch? Yes. There is absolutely no doubt, right? Benning drafted Demko, right? That was a guy that he was very interested in. Obviously wasn't heavily involved with the first round pick of Pettersson, Hughes, Besser to a degree. But at the same time, we have to sort of sit back and say, well, what narrative were they trying to sell? I mean, the idea was Jim Benning was going to come fix drafting. Well, certainly he pushed drafting in a new direction in 2014. And then things evolved, right? Like, it's hard to ignore the fact that 2015, 2016 especially, were very bad drafts, right? The Jay Virtanen was a bad choice. Olli Juolevi, I think, everyone expected was going to be a solid NHLer, but just about everybody you talk at that point thought he was being drafted too high. And so there's sort of an element of the bar was not that the bar of finding these picks in particular, other than Demko, wasn't that high. Miller was the type of player that I think they clearly been chasing, right? They've been looking, we need another forward, we need another guy, right? And that was without a doubt a good target, right? In terms of a trade.
Yeah, but he was rubbish for that trade because he gave up a first-round pick.
Yeah, absolutely. There was huge risk involved, right? And at the time, the value was basically, are they going to be is he going to be a player that is going to push them to a point where that pick doesn't have as much value as it might have otherwise? What was the process behind it? I think the process on that one was pretty good. What was the process on the trade he makes 2 years later to get Oliver Ekman-Larsson? I don't think that one was good. That was a Hail Mary throw, right? So, but you can't ignore these things. There are some good things, so he gets credit. But what about, how do you weight those other things? In the end,
of course. I'm just saying that, and it's complex, and I don't want to relitigate Benning's career. I mean, right. I did ask the question. I'm just saying that I think, to your point as well, I'm not going to say it's easy, because there are guys like Jake Virtanen and Olli Juolevi in any organization, but when you're so bad you're constantly picking at the top of the draft, you're going to hit some home runs, right? And if we look at previously constructed, whether it's Stanley Cup champions or just Canuck teams, it's finding the BXs in the third round. It's finding the Alex Burrows, right? The Sedins were the easy ones, and they took a long time to get there. But when you're dealing with the second and third pick, you're gonna get good, at least potentially good players to deal with. It's finding those other pieces, and that's where I find the two regimes have kind of come together here.
A little bit.
This is where we are.
The parallel is, how much credit does Dave Nonis get for 2011, right?
Yep.
He certainly was involved in building some of that roster. But what puts your team over the roster? Is it the performance of Elias Pettersson, JT Miller, Quinn Hughes, or is it the performance of guys like Teddy Bluger and Dakota Joshua?
That's a great point. Ask the Edmonton Oilers.
Yeah, it's the assembly. So I think, yes, okay, yeah, you know what? Yes, Jim Benning drafted the two best forwards on the team, right? Or three best forwards on the team. Those are his guys. Yeah, he drafted the best defenseman, probably the best defenseman in team history. Yeah, he got a great goalie, one of the guys who is going to be one of the best Canucks goalies of all time, and that's a big thing. There is credit to him, and absolutely, but the bigger credit goes to the fact that Rutherford and Alvin they took the rest of the roster is theirs. Look at the defense core, right? There are two defensemen.
Oh, for 10 years we were saying the Canucks have nothing on the blue line.
Right. They have two defensemen from the Benning era. One of them is Tyler Myers, who is coming to the end of a contract that was too big for what he was going to be. And Quinn Hughes obviously is an electric, amazing story. But the rest of that defense core has been acquired by the current group. So that matters. The fact that certainly the best backup goalie we've seen in a decade, Casey DeSmith, is from this group, right? And even for Benning, the best backup goalie he had neither was a guy I don't think you can call Demko was a quality backup when he first arrived, backup Jacob Markstrom. He was still learning his way. Jacob Markstrom, when he was Ryan Miller's backup, was not acquired by Jim Benning. Eddie Lax wasn't acquired by Jim Benning, right? There's a lot in this that says, at the end of the day, most of the credit for this team goes to the current management group. And they picked the coach. They found the perfect coach. And that, to me, is the biggest part of the story, was that at the end of the day, I liked Travis Green. I thought he was an interesting coach, but he's not Rick Tocchet. Obviously, Willie Desjardins was never anything close to either of those guys. So, that they have found a guy that has really taken everything to the next level. And you look at what Quinn Hughes has done with his game this year, Brock Besser to a lesser extent, Elias Pettersson, I think was always going to become this guy, but Quinn Hughes taking it to the next level is 100% down on sort of the way the organization has changed the way it pushes itself, the way it pushes players. And to me, that comes back to management. So yes, there is a small amount of credit that goes to Jim Benning in all this, absolutely. But at the end of the day, this is not a performance that Jim Benning was ever going to be able to push out of this roster.
Awesome. We'll get more into talk it next week because we're kind of running out of time here, but we will finish up with our look at the schedule. So We got Buffalo in a kind of a wild afternoon game on Saturday. You seen the weather in Buffalo? Like 3 feet of blowing snow.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
that's could be difficult.
Yeah.
Then you got this weird Monday 10 a.m. game because of Martin Luther King Day,
Right.
holiday in the States, not here. Then they come home, they play Arizona. Personally, I'm gonna say they win all three of those. Now, we will do another pod next week. After that, you've got your, oh my God, they're playing at home at 4 o'clock on a Saturday against the Leafs. I mean, screw the people. I hate Toronto as much as anyone else, but give me an opportunity to go downtown, go to a game, and go out afterwards. Like, no problems with that whatsoever. Anyway, so you got Buffalo, Columbus, Arizona. Then you've got Toronto, Chicago without Bedard, St. Louis, and Columbus again at home. I think the Canucks are going to win all those games. I think they finish January on this hot streak. And then you've got another big road trip early February after the break where you're looking at, Carolina, Boston, Detroit. Like, then it's a little tougher. But, I mean, clearly they could lose one of those games. But when I'm looking at games now, I'm like, oh, the Canucks are going to win that one. Oh, the Canucks are going to win that one. How many do you think they're going to win?
Well,
let's say till the end of the month.
Till the end of the month. Okay. I mean, I will preface this by pointing out that last week I said they go 5-2, or whenever we last talked before this road trip, yeah. I said they go 5-2. Well, they could go 6-1.
Yeah.
Buffalo. We'll see how things go in Buffalo, obviously, and then Columbus with the, like you said, that strange midday.
The early start be a bit weird for them, yeah.
But I mean, the Leafs. I mean, the Leafs are tough. They've got some. I mean, they're a bit like the Canucks, right? Like very top heavy in terms of their offense. Obviously, just signing Willie Nylander, who again could have been a Canuck. Let's go back to the Jim Benning discussion. Everyone said, anyway, here we are.
Don't make me regret bringing that up.
But the Canucks got their power forward, and here we are. He plays in Germany. So, man, like, let's look at, okay, so we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 7 games to go, right? So the Sabres, unless somehow the Canucks, eat too many buffalo wings on Friday night, it's hard to imagine them not winning that.
Right.
Even though Buffalo should be better than they've been. But there's hard to imagine the Canucks not beating the Blue Jackets. Hard to imagine the Canucks not beating the Coyotes, but there's going to be a banana skin somewhere in here. That Leafs game, I mean, what happens if I say the Leafs are going to win?
No,
people
are going
to scream at me?
Right.
That's one there. The Blackhawks, it's entirely possible my beer league team could at least score a goal on them. So the odds are that the Canucks are going to blow the Blackhawks out of the water. So that's what we're looking at: 3-1, 4-1. Blues. We saw what the Blues did. I really think the Blues are a quietly underrated team. I think the Blues are going to win that one again. The Canucks had a lot of problems, and then there's the Blue Jackets. So in the last 7 games, I'm going to go 5-2 again. I think they're going to go in the All-Star break on a really good note. And they're going to win 5 of the next 7 games.
5-2. I say 7-0. Man, the media is negative in this town. Thank you to Paragon Roofing, paragonroofingbc.ca. Best roofers in the province. Check them out if you need your roofs. Stay warm, stay cold. Subscribe to our Canuck Report newsletter. You get all this content delivered to you every day. Everything you need to know about New Zealand Lalonde. You can follow Patrick on his socials. Patty J on the road, although not really on the road anymore, on Instagram, and of course Rising Action on X. So thanks everyone. We will talk to you next week when the Canucks are in the midst of a 9-game winning streak. Who knows? We'll see. You gotta admit, Patrick, it's interesting to have to look up records all the time now, which we haven't done for almost a decade. So
yeah.
Have a good week, everyone. Stay warm.